Hi, good morning, all, and welcome to our Facebook Live. My name is Bree Hall, and I am with High Plains Fair Housing Center. And if I could have each of you introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ashley Johnner. I am the Director of Advocacy at Sacred Pipe Resource Center in Bismarck. We serve the urban tribal population in Bismarck, Mandan, Lincoln, and my role here is to assist any individuals who come kind of case by case scenario. We're in the school systems, in the housing systems, in the judicial systems, and anywhere where our community members feel that they need some support.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Malnori. I work at CVIC in Grand Forks as the Director of Victim Advocacy and Housing. I get to help support individuals who've experienced intimate partner violence by connecting them with safety and supportive services. That could look like working on maybe a protection order or filing a police report. And most of the work that I get to do is help find them safe housing through our transitional housing program.
Great. Hi, I'm Michelle Reds. I'm the Executive Director of High Plains Fair Housing Center. We work on housing discrimination throughout North and South Dakota.
Thank you all for that. And so, Michelle, will you kick off today's conversation?
Sure. So starting on tomorrow, November 1st, is Indigenous Peoples Month. And so just wondering what Indigenous Peoples Month means to you personally and to your community. You can start with Aubrey.
Yeah, for me, it's a time to reflect, it's a time to learn and honor the strengths and contributions of Indigenous people. Um, I really encourage people just to take some time, find something to really just like learn more about.
Yeah, thank you. And Ashley?
Yeah, I'm an enrolled member of the Saniarok Sioux tribe, and so here in Bismarck, that is one of the closest reservation here in town. And so we do a lot of partner events throughout the month, and we use the month to provide education, not only to our urban tribal population about our extremely resilient history, but also to non-natives in our community, like Aubrey had said about the contributions and the history of our people, and we have different events going on all throughout the month. And yeah, I'm just thankful that we have this month to be able to really highlight the strengths of our culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think even for non-native people, or especially for non-native people, this is an opportunity for us to learn about, like you said, the contributions. And North Dakota has such a thriving, native community, and so many different nations here. So just to learn about it is, really, really powerful this month.
Yeah, definitely. One of the events that I can talk about later too that we do is we talk about different tribal people all around the nation too, and their contributions to the United States as a whole. And so it's a learning experience for us and for others in our community. Um so yeah, it's a really fun month here at Sacred.
Yeah. I actually just got back from Anchorage. I was in Anchorage, Alaska, and I went to the museum. We went to there's a Native American village in Anchorage, and there's 241 tribes
Yeah.
in Alaska. I mean, it's
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and they have a connection to the Navajo. So but that's so far away geographically. So really interesting. Um, like you said, nationwide, like all the powerful Native communities, throughout
And
the
there's
nation.
such a connection, like you said. And one of the trivia questions that we provided last year was about cultural practices of the Inuit people. And so the feed that they have every year is so similar to our Lakota ways. There's just, you can
Oh,
see similarities all across the different tribal nations. So yeah, it's,
that's so cool.
yeah.
So earlier this month for Indigenous Peoples Day, we had a post go online that mentioned both Indigenous Peoples Day and Christopher Columbus Day. And so as an organization, our job is to do advocacy and to hold people accountable. And I believe that really starts with holding ourselves accountable. And so, since that post went out, we've had some time to reflect and realize that the pairing of the two was inappropriate and really failed to honor the true history and the ongoing impact of colonization. And so, can you help us and our audience understand why it's important to make that distinction and what messages get reinforced when we don't?
So I just have a clarifying question on that real quick. There were, and I don't know, you guys, maybe, I didn't see the post myself. So was it a post on your High Plains Fair Housing page and it highlighted both Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day?
Yeah, on the same post. It was a volunteer that did
Oh,
it,
on
and
the
we
same.
didn't. It was on the exact same post. They were put together. It was a volunteer that did it, and we didn't do our due diligence and check it. And then,
Oh, it was
and
like
as
a
soon as
comment.
no,
It,
no, it
it
was
said
a
like Happy Indigenous Peoples Day and Christopher Columbus Day. So
Okay,
within
okay,
within the same post.
okay. Just wanted to clarify.
yeah.
It's good to clarify. Yes.
So,
Um,
Ashley, yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. Like I think it is important for us to hold ourselves accountable. And so thank you for having this conversation and being transparent about wanting to, make things clear and not blur those lines as far as, the work that you guys do and what you support. And so I feel, and I can only speak for myself on this, I can't speak for an entire group of people, but I feel that oftentimes as a Native person, you look to agencies like High Plains Fair Housing to be an ally. And to be a voice in our communities, and uh, and it's needed. It's desperately needed. It can't be only Native nonprofits or Native organizations. We've been saying this, for years and years and years that this day is is wrongfully maybe celebrated for Christopher Columbus and that narrative and that history that was pushed for years and years. And so we've been saying that, and we look to people like High Plains for Housing and other nonprofit allies in the community, and even just, volunteers and stuff like that in our communities to help support those conversations. And that's what's needed. That's what's needed for change, or are people to help, I guess, help you lend their voices to right those wrongs and to be a supportive ally. And so I can see how, I'm not sure what kind of feedback you guys got from that, but I think it's more telling on your part that you want to have a conversation about it more than any, negative feedback you got from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I think it just speaks volumes that we're acknowledging this and providing that education piece to, those that are following. And just speaking on that piece of recognizing the difference is such a step towards true understanding and respect. And kind of to Ashley's point of for so long, there's been this kind of incorrect narrative that we've been celebrating. And so just being able to shift it and really have allies, provide correct information in the history and the context behind the two different, holidays or whatnot is just so important.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate it, and I think we took it down before it was up too long, but it was just jarring for us. So thank you for participating and helping us educate ourselves and the community also about that. Um, shifting a little bit to housing, both North and South Dakota have some of the highest racial disparities in housing and home ownership, especially in the Native American population. From your perspective, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are for housing facing Native American people today? Both in home ownership, but if you also want to speak to rentals, we can talk about that as well. Aubrey,
Yeah,
you're
that's
right
a
next to
really
me on the screen, so.
sure. That's a really good question. I can think of a lot of things, but I know one thing right now that a lot of the individuals that I'm working with are facing is just the barrier of credit scores and not having credit when it comes to applying for rentals, and how sometimes, like, that's not taught and we don't know what credit is, or we don't just naturally have it. And I think that's a huge barrier, regardless of your identity or background, that I've been
Mhm.
seeing. Um, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. I see that both in renting and homeownership, and the native community is really preyed upon when it comes to lending and building credit and those practices. And same with Christopher Columbus, that the indigenous people are very generous people, so being taken advantage of is unfortunately a huge part of the outcomes we're living today. And so, yeah, I think the huge barriers is the vulnerability and the predatory practices that take place both on and off the reservation, specifically on the reservation, and then when individuals try to come off the reservation and look for better housing options because there's not a lot on the reservation.
Right.
Um, there's a ton of discrimination that is, hidden, and there's been really no concerted effort to set someone up for success. So like if someone did grow up on the reservation and there's no banks and there's more payday loans than centers than there are Starbucks in our nations, and so
Mm.
I mean, are around the United
Mhm.
States, and so there's really a lack of concerted effort to set people up for success when for hundreds of years there's been a concerted effort for the opposite, to harm our native people. And so I think until that changes, it's going to be an ongoing situation. And I think having even these conversations, because of that discriminatory piece, I get people all the time that say, simply because of my last name, I feel like I have a hit against me in applying for a home and applying for a loan and applying for a apartment in town, right? And so I think the more we have these conversations, and make it so that discrimination and the correct history is taught, that is when some of those barriers start to come down for Native people.
Yeah, I think that you said two really good points there. One is the setting up for success. So that's, sort of this education part from the beginning, but also the hidden discrimination that people experience when they get off the reservation. So we did a fair housing test in Bismarck one time with a Native American tester and a white tester, and the Native American tester was um, shown only the basement apartment, and the white tester was shown the first floor and the basement apartment. And so it was like clearly so that's a very subtle, and if it wasn't for a test, we never would have known, like if it
Mhm.
was just a regular rental experience and a Native American was said that the only availability was the basement, they wouldn't have known to challenge that. So we were able to file a complaint against that, and to get education and remedies because that happened. But that doesn't, but that's hidden, right? So there's not
So
a
hidden.
lot of ways, or there's other things that are, the subtle discrimination where they'll say, we do a background check to a white
Mhm.
tester, and then they'll say you can't have any felonies to a Native American tester. So those
Mhm.
are also really subtle discriminatory actions that people might not pick up at, or may know as a microaggression, but also could be could be a fair housing complaint. And I know, we try very hard to work with, folks to get them to file a complaint. But we understand it's a long process and there's not a lot of trust in the system.
Yeah.
And so people don't feel confident to file the complaints. That's why groups like High Plains can at least replicate that experience to determine whether or not there's going to be there's discrimination that happens. And then another instance is one of our testers talked about how when he came off, when he left the reservation and went to college, and he said, "Oh, people said, oh, you're going to have to look at 3 or 4 apartments before they're going to rent to you," and then he's like, "Yeah, whatever." And then he said, but then when he went to buy a house and people weren't calling him back, he would call lenders and they weren't calling him back. He's like, I had money, I had a job, he said, I didn't believe that was going to happen, And so it was pretty powerful. That's why he chose to be a tester, because he wanted to, prepare other people, to pave the way for other people to be able to, not be discriminated against.
Yeah, I think it's hard for people when they don't hear those stories or they don't know someone who's experienced those situations. It's really hard for them to grasp their mind around it. And I think I almost want to say, like, not combative, but like simply don't want to hear some of those stories that happen and that take place to people in the
Right.
community and don't want to acknowledge it, which then just perpetuates the cycle, which is why I do appreciate High Plains, because we do need places where natives can feel that it is a trustworthy agency and have those conversations, so that when I say, hey, this is discrimination and I know someone at High Plains who can help you with this, that our tribal population in Bismarck feel comfortable reaching out and saying, I really need
Yeah.
help in this situation.
Yeah, for sure.
We kind of like briefly touched on this, but in your opinion, what do you think fair housing looks like through an Indigenous lens?
I think of just safety, dignity, and belonging, and also just the ability to make choices. Kind of to Michelle's point of, they were only shown the basement unit and maybe not the first floor. Like that's just a choice and a decision and opportunity that was taken away from them. So just having that ability, um,
Yeah.
it for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I love that statement. And I, one thing that we had talked about before here at Sacred Pipe and what fair housing looks like is um, the way people build themselves up into home ownership, and maybe that's not even an option. I talk about the reality of that not being an option for many of our Native people.
Yeah.
Um, is the rental places um, are not always conducive, and even HUD places are not conducive to Native families and the traditional practices that are very much so alive today in multi-generational homes. It's almost actually frowned upon. So little stuff like that where we could do better in supporting, our family structures are very different. Our grandmas and grandpas and our aunts and uncles are very different than what the mainstream lays their family out to be, and our systems do not support that. And so oftentimes it's very frowned upon in having multi-generational homes in your family. Um, and in our culture, it's celebrated. And so I think when we have even just those foundational conversations about why things look so different, and why native families have such a huge family in their home, just even having some of those conversations to shape systems so that they support people
Yeah.
rather than evict them.
I love that. I love that idea. It's really, really powerful. And conversations to shape systems that are reflective of our cultures. That's that's great. Aubrey, did you go already?
Yeah. I went right before Ashley, but I could
Okay.
just listen to her speak all day. Like I'm over here nodding
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. Me too. Okay. So for organizations like High Plains Fair Housing Center, or for the people that work with us and who want to be better allies, what are some meaningful actions or partnerships or things that we can do to support Indigenous-led organizations or advocacy efforts?
So I think this exactly, honestly, like I said, I applaud you guys for having this conversation, especially after a misstep happened, right? It's easy to have conversations when nothing is happening, but something
Yeah.
took place and you guys want to bring light to it. And I think that speaks volumes about your organization and your intent and the trust you want to build throughout, our communities. And so I thank you for that. Um, and I would just say to continue that, I know High Plains is always reaching out to Sacred Pipe, and we're extremely grateful for that. Um, I think continually making those efforts. So, for example, like on Indigenous Peoples Day, sharing a meme is cool, and that a saying or something is cool, but talking with people and getting people's voices heard out there, I think is so important. And so. I just think if we continue to work together and have some of these conversations and kind of call it what it is and bring a education piece for everybody. It's, we're not pointing fingers here. It's just a really great conversation. And I hope it can really be a talking piece for people. And I hope we can have conversations in spaces like this where people can say, oh, I didn't know the family structures were different. Let's talk about that. Even stuff like that, I think is so
Mhm.
helpful in our communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just continue to be a learner and have these conversations. And this work isn't just check a box. It's kind of to Ashley's point of it's continuous, right? It's not just celebrating one Indigenous Peoples Day or making one post and then kind of being done. It's uplifting Indigenous voices, including them in conversations from the beginning, not towards the end when decisions have been made already,
Mm,
but really getting, everyone's perspective.
Yeah,
thanks.
I love that.
Thank you both for that. So as we kind of wrap up, are there any resources, organizations, any events that we want to highlight for people to learn about Indigenous Peoples Month or to support?
Yeah, we
Ashley?
have a lot going on here at Sacred Pipe as usual. Um, but a few things I can talk about in the month of November. So this will be our third year doing daily Native American trivia. And we do a door prize with it daily, and we offer trivia like I had talked about from all tribes across our country and the beautiful contributions and the historic events that have taken place. And so we highlight that every day we go live in the month of November and have an interactive trivia question on our Facebook. This weekend we're having a star quilt event show at the Kirkwood Mall in Bismarck. So we'll be highlighting local quilters, artists with their work. And this will be our second year, our second annual. So we're really excited about that. The first year was beautiful, seeing all the beautiful quilts in the mall. So we'll be doing that. We'll be going live tomorrow there. And then the 21st is our first Indigenous food crawl. So we hear about
Oh,
like the St. Patrick's Day crawls and
yeah.
stuff like that. This year we're doing an Indigenous food crawl and we'll be highlighting all the Native nonprofits, businesses, the tribal college, and then we're ending up at the Indian Affairs Commission as our end point. And so some of the small businesses some of the vendors are getting together and having a location that, and then at each spot there will be like a traditional food maybe from their tribe or what they grew up with. And so it's our first one, and it's the 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on November 21st.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then the last one is our small business vendor show. It's on November 29th, and it's at the Civic Center. And I think that grew from like our executive director Cheryl doing it with 4 vendors, and now we're up to 50, I want to say. So now we're at the
Wow.
exhibition hall at the Civic Center. And so we have just a ton of local small businesses, vendors, some brick and mortar, just a whole diverse group of Native entrepreneurs. So that is free to the public, and a really great time to get some shopping done.
Yeah. Awesome.
My list is much shorter. The one thing I'd like to leave just highlighting that's relevant to the work that I do is October was also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So the month was just to, recognize and raise awareness around the prevalency of domestic violence. It affects so many people regardless of age, gender, race, identity. But there's still time to learn more and support. So, CVIC on our website has a lot of great resources. And then one other resource that I'll leave out there is First Nations Women's Alliance. They are a nationally recognized dual domestic violence and sexual assault tribal coalition who provide culturally relevant services and resources around DV. So that's another really great resource.
Great. High Plains does have a exhibit going on at the Grand Forks Public Library starting November 3rd and going for the whole month. It is on the history of Native American housing in North Dakota. For a long time, the fair housing story has been told through the lens of urban communities and redlining and blockbusting, but we really don't have the full story of what fair housing and housing discrimination looks like when we talk about, termination and relocation, when we talk about, moving Native American communities to reservations. And so this is just kind of some light brushstrokes about that. It's a work in progress. We worked with the Honors College at the University of North Dakota, and some students put this together, and we think it's a really good start. But we are getting more input as well as we begin to develop it. But we will be having that exhibit. It's kind of an interactive exhibit with some opportunities for reflection at the end, and then there'll be some door prizes also at the end of the month. So we hope people can come out and take a look at it and talk about it, just for some information. So.
I love that, Michelle. I forgot we're doing something similar to that. I shouldn't say similar, but we're also doing a
Yeah.
showcase at our library in Bismarck.
Oh, great.
And so we are using some of the art pieces where we had traditional dwellings like a teepee, an earth lodge, some of the southern homes, the woodland homes, and then we tie it in, done by our local artists here from our Arts Council. And then we tied it in with you know, barriers that Native people in our community have experienced in renting here in town. And
Wow, that's
so,
awesome.
yeah, it kind of ties in like the traditional cultural piece along with some of the ongoing, issues that Native people have in our community here. And so and it's the same artwork that we used during legislative session. I think
Okay.
we let you guys know about that. So
Yeah.
it's the same artwork that the legislators saw on a daily basis for 2 months to advocate for housing.
That is great. So when is that for the month of November?
The whole month, yeah. And
Okay,
then
great. So I need to get out there because
yeah,
Seems
will
like
be
we're very
somewhat interactive
complimentary.
because I'm gonna go there. Our housing council asked to go there, and some of the people who did the painting. And so we're gonna set up a booth here and there and just be there just to talk about Sacred Pipe and about the art. And then of course housing, you know, kind of find a way to get that in there too, as always. And so so yeah, it'll be interactive also.
Perfect. That's awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like an exciting month ahead for everyone, really. Well, thank you all very much for your time and for being willing to have this conversation with us. Are there any final thoughts before we close out?
No,
No,
thank you
just
for inviting us for this conversation and thank you for having it. Honestly, it speaks volumes about you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
thanks.
both very much.
Bye.
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 Bye.